Good morning. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us here today at the Utah State Archives. Those in person and those joining us remotely, we're happy to have you join us today. Today our training will be specifically to help local districts and special service districts to be in compliance with some recent changes in the law. Those of you that are here in person should have picked up one of our folders, and inside the folder there are a number of things. There is a survey form, a feedback form, and would like you to give us some feedback at the conclusion to help us to improve our training. There is a pamphlet, Are You in Compliance with the Open Records Portal? There is a table that I'll be talking about in my presentation about the public notice website, and then there's a folder or a sheet on the Open Records Portal reference and some forms. And for those who are remote, these forms are available online as well. So our training today will be in 4 segments. And I'll be beginning. My name is Glenn Fairclough. I'm the administrator for the Utah Public Notice website. And our next presenter will be Nova Dubovic. And Nova is the executive secretary for the State Records Committee. And Nova will be talking about GRAMA, the Government Records Access and Management Act. She'll also be talking about certification. Then we'll have a brief break, 5-minute break. And then after the break, we'll resume, and we'll be talking about records management. And Lorianne Outerkirk, the records analyst that is assigned to work with local government and special service districts, will be talking about records management essentials and also a new way to certify for those that are doing records management. And then we'll finish with Renée Wilson, and Renée is the administrator for the Open Records Portal. So how many of you have an assignment to work with the Public Notice website? Any of you? A couple? Most everyone here today. And are you from state government or local government or special service districts? Special service districts. Okay, great. So if you're not aware, the Public Notice website is a way for government to be accountable. It's a way for the public to gain information, to have information more accessible to them. So notices prior to meetings are posted on the Public Notice website. It's a central location where people can go, and the information is uniform. The information that's required is uniform, and that's standardized, so people can find out about events in their community, things that are coming up, and it helps about government activities which may concern people with their local area, municipality, county, city, or state. So this is a screenshot showing the homepage of the Public Notice website, and then a page on the public side about the Public Notice website, and helps people to know the purpose of the website and a little bit about how to go about maneuvering through the website, how to find the information that is available there. The Public Notice website was created by the legislature in 2003, and the following year, in 2008, the Public Notice website was launched. So there was some development that went into that, and after a year it went online. And when it first went online, there was an exemption for municipalities and special service districts with an annual operating budget of less than $1 million. And in 2012, at the end of 2012, that exemption disappeared. So now there is no longer an exemption for those that have an operating budget of less than $1 million. So everyone should be participating regularly anytime that there are meetings, to be posting those meetings on the Utah Public Notice website. So there are in statute, in the Utah Code, there are more than 60 different statutes that deal with public notice. And these vary very greatly. There are some titles that the Open and Public Meetings Act is the primary one, and that applies to all government. And that's the primary purpose, or the primary site that you'll find information about posting the notice, the advance notice, and the agenda. And some agencies are required to post minutes. Some agencies are required to post an audio recording, but that doesn't apply to everyone, and I'll go into that a little bit later. The titles that deal specifically with local governments and special districts in particular, Title 17B, 17C, and 17D. I threw in Title 75, not because it really applies to special service districts, but just to show you some of the variety of requirements. There was a requirement passed about 6 years ago now, maybe 7, that requires courts to post a public notice if they've exhausted all other means of trying to contact someone that may be interested in a probate hearing. So these 60 different statutes, they vary widely in their requirements. And some require posting on in numerous places, not only the public notice website, but if you've been posting notices for public meetings, you're familiar with the requirement to post in different public places. Maybe you're posting it at the town hall or the post office, wherever. And you just have to be familiar with the requirements that apply to you specifically, because there are so many different ones. There's also another site that is frequently confused with the public notice website. It's called the legal public notice website. In some cases, there's a requirement to post to both websites, and you won't be in compliance if you post to one and not the other if the requirement is to post to both. So please be aware of that. Try to familiarize yourselves with the particular statutes that apply to you. So in the Open and Public Meetings Act, there are 3 different subsections, and each subsection deals with a different part of government. There's one that deals with state government. It's called a state body, and that would be state level government. So the state archives, the Department of Health, or the Department of Transportation. There's something else that's called a specified local body, and that's defined in the statute, in the Open and Public Meetings Act, as the legislative body of a county, a city, or a town. And then the 3rd subsection deals with those that are not state bodies or are not specified local bodies. And in the case of the special service districts, that applies to them. So The only requirement then for special local districts and special districts would be to post the notice and the agenda. All of these things listed on the slide must be available in the office, and in some cases, some very small special service districts, you don't really have an office. So at whatever location, someone's home or whatever location that is designated to be the office, these things must be available during normal business hours for inspection. And in the handout, in your folder, there is that handout that looks at the table that looks like this. And this lists the different bodies, the state body, the specified local body, and then everyone else. And then there are columns for each of these different categories of records. The notice with the agenda, the draft minutes, approved minutes, public materials distributed at a meeting, and an audio recording or a link to that. And as I mentioned, the only requirement for special service districts would be the notice with the agenda. For those that are viewing remotely, this same table is found online. After you log in, there's a help tab in the upper right-hand corner of the page. And when you click on that, that will bring up a section called Helpful Questions and Answers. And about 2/3 of the way down in that list of questions, there's a question that says, what is public information and what am I required to post on the Utah Public Notice website? And you'll find this the same chart, the same table there. Now, earlier this year, and the year isn't very much along, we're just into the third week of the new year, but I did get an email from an employee with the state auditor's office. And he had two questions, and one of the questions was, who is posting on the public notice website? So some of you I know have received questionnaires, a self-assessment type questionnaire. Others have been contacted by an auditor, and that prompted you to contact me and get things set up so that you're able to post on the public notice website. But we do need to be aware that this is a requirement, a legal requirement, and the state auditor's office is looking into compliance. So if you're not in compliance, please do what you can. Give me a call and get in compliance. A recent development was the passage last year in the legislative session of Senate Bill 99, which is called the Transparency for Political Subdivisions. And this is a new requirement, and special districts are now required to post each board member's name, each board member's telephone number, and each board member's email address. So this contact information is required. And when I was contacted by the state auditor's office, they also asked who is in compliance with this portion of the law. So we want you to be aware that this is happening. So in summary, talking about the Utah Public Notice website anyway, there is the requirement for special service districts to post the notice and the agenda on the Utah Public Notice website, and to make public materials available in the business office during normal business hours, and also to post the name, telephone number, and email address, that contact information, on the Utah Public Notice website. If you have questions about any of that, contact me. I was going to mention, or I will mention now, when we set up the public notice website for that contact information for the board members, we thought that that no one could possibly have a board that was in excess of 20 people. So we set it up to accommodate up to 20 people, and then we found out that some of the associations governments have boards in excess of 60 people. So if that's the case with you, please contact me, and we'll explain how that we can work that out. Some resources that deal with the Utah Public Notice website. The website itself, and well, that first slide that I showed with the homepage, we're found at utah.gov/PMN, and that's there are helpful questions and answers and an About tab to help people to become a little better familiar with that. On the Utah State Archives website, there is a page, a landing page or a page that will link you through then to the Public Notice website, but it also has information, some background information, some other resources. There you will find a link to the comprehensive website manual. It's a 63-page manual. It has illustrations with screenshots. It has step-by-step instructions instructing people to do everything that you need to do on the Public Notice website. And that's a helpful tool. Another helpful tool is the quick guide for owners and posters, and that's just 6 pages. It doesn't have the volume of material, doesn't cover as much as the comprehensive manual, but it does give you the more frequently used tasks. And so it might be helpful to print out the 6-page version, the quick guide, and have that at your fingertips. And if you needed to refer to the more comprehensive manual, do that online. And then I mentioned the helpful questions and answers. I didn't mention earlier, but we do have some time. This is the time for questions and answers, and each presenter will open the floor to questions if anyone has any particular questions. In my case, about the Public Notice website. Is there anyone that was confused about anything I was saying? Something wasn't clear? Yes, Allie.
So when you're talking about posters and who is posting, we just need to check with the rules, with what the rule says about our agency in regards to who can post, and make sure we're in compliance with that, because it's specific to like different organizations. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glenn, can you repeat that for the people online? The question.
Would you repeat your question?
Yeah,
No, can you repeat it?
No, I want her to repeat it so that I can repeat it.
Oh, okay.
Just how do we know who should be posting for?
Okay, she wanted to know how she would know what she needed to be posting. And so you need to be familiar with the statutes that do apply to special service districts or to state government agencies or to those legislative bodies. Be familiar with the statutes, with the requirements for your particular organization. We can help with some of that, but I haven't memorized all 60. But some of the more basic things, particularly from the Open and Public Meetings Act. Nova?
Yes, I have a question, Glenn, from Andrea Partridge. Where on the website do we post the information of each board member?
Okay, so there's a question about where on the Public Notice website is the contact information for board members posted. There are 2 different types of accounts. There's an account called an entity owner account, and those people with those types of accounts can make this change. They can update the templates. So you would go to, I think it's either page 28 or page 38 in the online manual. It talks about editing a public body. So that's where you would find the instructions to make that change. So under the body subheading, you would click the search button, and then find that template, enter the information, the government type, and the entity name, and the body name. And that's where you would be entering that contact information. Any other questions from our online people or our audience here? Yes?
It is page 28.
Okay, it's confirmed that was page 28 then? Okay, great. I haven't memorized the entire manual, the entire 63-page manual, but any other questions before? Oh, Nova has a question from an online.
I have an online question. Please address whether the draft of the audio recording from minutes of a meeting are required to be posted prior to the board. So draft of the audio recording from minutes of a meeting, I'm guessing prior, are required to be posted prior to the board. That they're probably going to approve, I'm guessing.
Okay, so attachments, we would post the notice for the original meeting, and then any attachments would be linked or attached to that original notice. So you would go back as though you were going to edit that notice, and then scroll to the bottom, and there's a shaded section at the bottom for attachments. And if you have that file on your computer, then you could attach that link to the original notice. And then be sure to publish. There's one of the publish buttons at the bottom of the screen, and that will, there are a couple steps, but just follow again the instructions for posting notices or adding attachments. That's on page 49 in the manual. If you follow the instructions on page 49 and then attach that file with draft minutes or an audio recording, you would attach that to the original notice. Nova?
I think it is, do they need to post the drafts from the previous meeting prior to the next meeting that they're going to be reviewing?
No, there's no requirement to post a draft of anything, minutes or audio recordings, anything like that. No requirement to post a draft. Anything else? We've got about 5 minutes left, or we'll turn it over early to Nova. So the question is, do we have to post for every meeting? And yes. So please post for every public meeting. A special service district is not required to attach an audio recording. It's only state government that needs to post the audio recording. So Nova every week or every month posts the audio for the State Records Committee, but the woman I was talking to earlier this morning from Shambip Soil Conservation District, she does not have to post an audio recording. She's welcome to. There's no prohibition. There's no anything that would prevent you from attaching that. And in some cases, the board actually wants to do that. They want that transparency, that openness. So that's available, but it's not a requirement yet, according to the Utah Public Notice website. Patty? If it's a public meeting, No, if it's not a public meeting, then there wouldn't be a requirement to do that. If it's a public meeting, yes. If it's just, so the archives is going to be expanding our repository, and we've been meeting with architects, with with contractors, with that sort of thing. That's not a public meeting. That's only a meeting for, there are no decisions being made, no, final decisions, the way, that's not considered a public meeting. And I'm not explaining that very well. If it's, if it's, and the law describes some different things. If it's a chance meeting, if it's more of a social gathering, if it's more of a fact-finding kind of a thing, then that's not considered a public meeting. But those regularly scheduled board meetings and that sort of thing, yes, those would be.
I was told for our local charter school board that if at least a quorum of us, even if we randomly meet, we can't discuss anything with the school, or we have to post minutes, even if we randomly meet at a Costco or something. If at least a quorum of us, majority meet, and any school business is discussed, whatever, we have to write those minutes up and post it. Would that be?
I'm not sure that I read the Open and Public Meetings Act quite that way. And then too, not being either a state body and not being a specified local body, there wouldn't be the requirement to post minutes either. But if that's something your individual board wants to do, and that's a requirement for you, yeah, go ahead and do that. But your charter school board wouldn't be the same for the recreation district or the mosquito abatement district. So yeah, that's another thing to consider too, is decisions that your board has made for your particular organization. I think I'm about out of time, so I'll be happy to, unless there's another online question.
Well, I think what you need to do is just come over here and just kind of go through the chat, because there's a lot of questions, but they're pretty, yeah.
Okay. So I will turn the time over to Nova, who will talk about the Government Records Access and Management Act and certification.
Thank you, Glenn. So over there on the table, we have GRAMA, this one, and then we have the Records Access Training Manual that you can review before you take the certification test. And primarily what my slide presentation is going to go through is the training manual. It's not going to get real in-depth. It's just an overview of GRAMA. So I'm going to talk about training and certification for records officers. And then we're going to discuss a little bit about GRAMA, which is actually, we have outlined more in layman terms in the training manual for you. So, again, my name is Nova, and I'm going to go through this pretty quick so that we can get to Lorianne. Okay, so the first part of this is training and certification for records officers. And some of you may have already heard this before, but those of you that haven't, that's what we have to kind of concentrate on today. So we have two paths for records officers to be certified. We have the GRAMA, the Government Records Access and Management Act certification test that you can take, and then we have records management certification test. And this was developed back in 2015 and became available online in 2016 for the two paths. And it really comes down to whether you handle GRAMA or if you strictly handle records management. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So if your responsibilities, if you're a chief administrative officer, in some of the smaller agencies, the chief administrative officer does all sorts of stuff, including answering GRAMAs, but you would establish records management program, appoint a records officer, and ensure that they are certified annually. So that would be your responsibility as a chief administrative officer. If you are a records officer, your duties may include care and maintenance, scheduling and disposal, classification, designation, providing access, and preserving records, and working with the state archives as well on that. Just give you kind of a second to read that. So at the state archives, we recognize that government agencies, they divide a lot of these responsibilities among different people within their offices. So it really comes down to, for example, some records officers are responsible for carrying and maintenance and scheduling of the records, and they may not classify records. And then you have other records officers who respond to grammar requests. So there's a lot of different hats that people wear. And that is especially true, like I said before, in small agencies where somebody does everything. So to certify annually, this is one responsibility, of course, that you can't share with another records officer. But how many of you have been on the Open Records portal and have taken the training? Okay, Nina. So a lot of you have. Your screenshot may look different from mine, but I certified, and this is what it looks like when you certify. And Renee is going to go through this a little bit more. It's all color-coded, so if you open it up and it shows red, well, then you know you're overdue or you haven't certified yet. So this is what it will look like for you. So like I said before, there are two paths to certification. You have records access, which is GRAMA, classifying records, if you respond to GRAMA requests. And then you have records management, which is your Public Management Act or PERMA. And you understand records and implementing retention schedules. And in my presentation, we're going to talk about records access. We won't talk about GRAMA. And for this particular, these two paths, a records officer has both responsibilities, may certify by taking, let's see, I'm going to say this correctly or it gets confusing. By taking the records access certification test the first time, and thereafter may certify by taking the records management and records access certification test alternately every other year. So records access. Whoops. Touchy. So if your responsibilities include answering GRAMAs, classifying records, you respond to GRAMA requests appropriately, then you would be taking this certification. If you go on our website, this is kind of what it looks like right here. These are the modules, and then you would want to download the GRAMA law and also download the training manual, which we have copies over there for you. And I highly recommend, the training manual is great, but I highly recommend that on an annual basis, go ahead and contact us or look on our website and see when we actually have some GRAMA classes. We do at least 4 a year, and then we go out to different regional areas and also teach. And usually Lori Ann or somebody from the records analyst section will come, so we do records management and GRAMA together. So we can travel out to see you. So in the training manual, there's 6 modules. There's general provisions, access to records, classifications, appeals. And then Module 5 talks about political subdivisions, and then Module 6 is all the other stuff. There's 4 other sections in GRAMA that we don't cover in the training. But these pretty much are outlined the same in the training manual as they are in the law. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the legislative intent, which is in general provisions. And then we'll go down each one of those. So the legislative intent is really to promote easy and reasonable access to public records, and to specify when interest and restrictions outweigh access, and to define the appropriate restrictions. It is the burden upon the government agency to, all records are public, they're all assumed to be public, and it's the government agency's determination of the content of the record, whether or not to restrict it or not. There are 30 definitions in the first part of the law, and I just picked out a couple of them. So record. Record means a book, a letter, a document, a paper, And this is all important because as a records officer, as you're going through the law or you're going through records management, you're going to want to know what the legal terminology of this is. So it's regardless of the physical form or characteristics, that's really what you want to focus in on. And that is prepared, owned, received, or retained by the governmental entity or the political subdivision. And that it's reproducible by photocopy or other mechanical or electronic means. But that is a definition in the law of a record. What is not a record? Well, the law lists a few. It says personal emails and documents that are not work-related. Temporary drafts were created for personal use. So that means you jot down numbers and you transcribe it into another database maybe. Well, that little sticky note you could shred, get rid of. That would be considered a temporary draft. Books contained in the library is not a record. Junk mail or spam is not a record. So if a requester asks for your junk mail or spam, not a record. And then computer programs. It talks about what a governmental entity is. The law states the state executive department agencies and offices, legislature and offices, and then for this particular training, we want to focus in on political subdivisions. That's what the governmental entity's definition is. So if you take public funds, you would be considered a governmental entity in the law. It talks about individuals in person, what they are. So an individual is defined as a human being, that's good. And then person is an individual, persons, organizations. So wherever you see in the law where it talks about person, you go back to the definition, and it doesn't say governmental entity. So another governmental entity would not file a grammar request on another governmental entity. There's another provision in the law for that. So records of security measures. And basically, in the general section, it talks about security plans, your security codes, your passwords, layout of your building. This is not subject to GRAMA. So they can request it, but they're not going to get it. Yeah.
We have an online question.
Yeah.
Are written complaints considered GRAMA?
Are they
records? I'm assuming records. Are they considered records?
Depends how they are retained. If there's a retention schedule, Lorianne would be better to ask that.
Would it be communication?
It could be, yeah. I think it depends on how it's, if there's a retention schedule for it and how it's maintained. So yeah, it could be. Disclosure of records subject to federal law. HIPAA. So this would include medical records identified, protected under HIPAA, controlled or maintained by a governmental entity. Also in the law is FERPA, that's your family education provision, that also falls under the federal statute, and that's not subject to GRAMA. And then certification of records officers. This is all part of the general provisions, and we've already talked about the certification of records officers, so we won't go over that again. The Module 2 is access to records. This is probably the most important section of the law, is Part 2, and it contains, it contains the public's, it delineates the public's right to access government records. It talks about how to answer a GRAMA request. It talks about how to deny. It talks about fees. It talks about appeals, right to access. So this is probably the most important section for a records officer to be familiar with. So, who has the right to inspect a record? Well, every person has the right to inspect records and receive copies during normal working hours. Government entity is not required to create a record, compile, or format records unless the requester agrees to a fee. So there has to be participant there. And then access cannot be hindered because the record is electronic or in a relational database. And so we use a lot of computer databases now, and sometimes you might need extra software to be able to create a report from that database. So just be cognitive that because it's electronic doesn't mean you can't provide it. Disclosure of records. Who can disclose records? Who can you disclose records to? Well, private records to the individual, parent, or legal guardian, or if you have a power of attorney or notarized access. Controlled records, these are also about individuals.
These are pretty specific.
These can be released to a physician, a psychologist, certified social worker, insurance provider, or producer. And you have to have a signed acknowledgement from the subject of the record. However, it must be noted in the law that the subject of the record does not get a copy of it. You cannot disclose it to them. And then you have protected records. Those are provided by the person who submitted the record. It could be a contract. And if somebody else wants to have access to that, they would have to have a power of attorney or a notarized release from all persons that are involved with that particular record. And then most important, verify identity of the requester. And a lot of different agencies have different ways of doing that. And some require them to come in person, some require a notarized document, some require a scanned photocopy of their driver's license. So it's up to you how you would do that. So when a records officer receives a GRAMA request, they have 10 business days to respond, and there's 4 basic ways that you would respond. You can approve and provide the record within those 10 business days. You can deny in part or in whole. You can notify the governmental agency that you do not maintain that record, and if you know who does maintain that record, provide them that name or address to where they can file that GRAMA request to that other agency. And if you have extraordinary circumstances where it is a very complex GRAMA request or you have voluminous GRAMA requests that week, there's 8 extraordinary circumstances in the law that you can look at. You may even have to advice from the attorney before you can provide that record. So you can take a look at the 8 extraordinary circumstances. If you do claim extraordinary circumstances, you need to let them know the requester within those 10 business days. Because that is an appealable action on the requester's end. Also in Module 2, you have fees, denials, sharing records, and subpoenas. So I don't think I'm going to go through a whole thing of fees. How much time do I have?
10 minutes, or, well, 15 minutes until 11, so.
Oh, okay.
15 total.
All right. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. So you may charge a reasonable fee to cover costs. Fees shall be established by the political subdivision. It should be written into your ordinances or policies. A lot of agencies place them on their website so that the public can see their fee schedule and know what they're going to be charged. You may fulfill requests without charge, and you're encouraged to do so. You can release the record that primarily benefits the public. You can waive the fees for that. To the subject of the record, and if the requester's legal rights are directly implicated, you could waive the fee. And the requester is impecunious. The Department of Corrections has a really good system because they have access to everybody's account. However, out in the counties and cities, some have an extra form that they have somebody fill out to provide information as to why they're impecunious and cannot afford the records. But again, each circumstance is unique. You may require payment of fees from past estimated fees before processing a request if the fees are expected to exceed $50 or more. Requester has not paid fees from previous requests, and of course, returning any excess money to them. So this is kind of a protection for you. If you have somebody that submits a lot of GRAMA requests and they haven't paid up, you can hold those until you get your fees. It just protects you. And it also states the law fees cannot be charged for reviewing a record to determine whether it's subject to disclosure or for allowing a requester to inspect the record. Denials. So on a denial, when denying access, you would provide the description of the record that access is being denied, and you would provide a legal citation from GRAMA or from another statute, maybe a court order or a court ruling. You'd have a statement for the requester that they have a right to appeal the decision. Usually the time frame is 30 days to the chief administrative officer, the designee, or if there's a local appeals board, it would go to the local appeals board. And name business address for the chief administrative officer. So this is all needs to be included in the denial. And this is just a simplified process, GRAMA process chart where it talks about the 10 business days. There's also 5 business days for expedited requests, but I'm not going to go over that today. And then it talks about how you would determine whether or not you would approve to provide the records, or you would have a denial, and then you would provide the requester the right to appeal a decision to the chief administrative officer. Information. Just a quick and dirty. Sharing records. Government agencies, you may share records with other government agencies. Private, controlled, protected through a written agreement within the government. So, and in your folder, there is a list of generic GRAMA forms that we have available for you on our website. And on the bottom, I believe, is the record sharing form that you could use. Most important here is just make sure you have a written agreement within the sharing, because you want to make sure that other government agency understands that that record is private or protected and not to be released. A lot of law enforcement agencies, they will provide records through record sharing to another agency, and they make the requirement that they are the only ones. So if you get a GRAMA request, you need to direct the requester back to law enforcement, because they're the only ones that will release that record if it's applicable. And subpoenas. Main thing to know here is subpoena is not a GRAMA request. Subpoenas and other methods of discovery, kind of think of it this way: a subpoena or discovery, the only way you can appeal it is through the judge, through the courts, whereas a GRAMA request, you have the chief administrative officer, you have the local appeals board, you have the state records committee, and then it can go to district court. So subpoenas and GRAMA requests are very different. Subpoenas are not a written request under 204. That's your record access section. So, Module 3 is Part 3 in the law, and there's a lot more in this section in the law, but we're just going to cover the 4: public, private, controlled, and protected. So public records. These can be open meeting minutes, like what Glenn was talking about, financial records, initial contact reports, that's law enforcement, government contracts, and then all records not specifically restricted. So, and just remember, all records are public unless otherwise expressly stated by law. So that's the assumption. Private records are records about individuals. Could be medical history, performance evaluations on government employees, library records that identify a patron, employee personal contact information, your home phone, your home address, any clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy would be considered private. And again, there's a whole section on this in Part 3. Controlled records are again about individuals. However, they can only be released to medical, psychiatric, or psychological data. They can only be released to a medical person, but they contain medical, psychiatric, or psychological data about an individual. And if released, could be detrimental to the subject of the record or the safety of the others around them. And also releasing violates medical ethics. So you have to be careful with the controlled records. Protected records. There are 65 protected records listed in GRAMA. They could add some more this year. I am crossing my fingers if they don't, but they may. So they have bids for contracts, trade secrets, proprietary information, test questions and answers. I would definitely not give you the test questions and answers to our certification tests. They are protected. Drafts. Some drafts are classified protected. Attorney-client privilege and records that could records released could interfere with government process such as an audit, exam, investigation, or trial. So there's a lot of them, but those are the most common ones. So Module 4 is appeals. And I think this is a really important provision. I know a lot of records officers sometimes don't get involved with the appeals, but it is the right of the requester or the interested party to appeal the decisions of the government agency. And the records officer should become familiar with the appeal process and then also take a look at, on our website, the State Records Committee's previous decisions and orders, because they're all about records, and there's some good stuff in there. So, like I said before, a requester has the right to appeal the government entity's decision. First, they would go to the Chief Administrative Officer. So, from the records officer, they would go 30 days after that decision to the Chief Administrative Officer. If there's a local appeals board that has been established, then they would appeal to the local appeals board, and then they could go to the State Records Committee or District Court. And then this is just another down and dirty process chart of how that works. And the Chief Administrative Officer, I like to note, has 5 business days to respond. However, in Section 401, there is, I think it's 5C, I'm not quite sure, but the Chief Administrative Officer and the requester can kind of communicate, and if they need extended time, they can work that out amongst themselves. So there is a provision in there for that. So Module 5 and 6. Module 5 is applicable to political subdivisions, judiciary, and legislature. Module 6 is all the other stuff that we didn't put in the test. But we highly recommend that you take a look at the other provisions in GRAMA. So Module 5, it's Part 7 of the law. And judiciary, the legislature, and the staff offices are exempt from some portions of GRAMA, not subject to State Records Committee appeals process, so they don't come to us. And they, of course, are responsible for the management and retention of their own records. So there's a little difference there. And they're not subject to GRAMA fee schedules. So they're slightly different than the rest of us. Ordinances and policies are under Part 7 as well. 701, this is what you would be interested in. Standards for the designation of records. So basically your policy talks about your records management within your agency. You establish fee guidelines within your ordinance, and I guess you could also have those posted on your website if you have one. And then it talks about the standards for management and retention of the entity's records. And again, Lorianne is going to go over that more. But this is what it says in the law that you have to do. And then in Module 6, other provisions in GRAMA. So we have the State Records Committee talks about how we are set up, what our body does. Part 6, collection of information, accuracy of records. Don't see a whole lot about this, but sometimes I'll have a requester asking about amending information in a record. So that is in there. That would be for the government agency to deal with, not the Records Committee. Part 8 is remedies. This talks about the Class B misdemeanor if you intentionally release a record knowing that it should not have been released. And then Part 9, public associations. This is kind of an oddball. It has to do with the, I think it was the Olympics in 2002. So anyway, that's an oddball one. So any questions? That was fast, but I wanted to get through there. Yeah.
Is there anything that you know of that specifies, like media? Like, are they different at all, like when media requests public records?
So the question is media different? In GRAMA, media is not different. However, they do say that if it's going to benefit the public, so if they're doing research or some type of news article, it's going to benefit Sure, I mean, you could waive the fee, but I've seen lots of agencies that do not waive the fee for the media, so that's not a done deal for them.
So not really different. And like with the time frame, the only like expedited request that they could request would be the 5 business days. There's not like a special time frame for media.
No, the time frame for media would be if they wanted either 10 business days, which would be the regular traditional way of answering a grammar request, or 5 business days for the expedited. Yeah. Yeah.
Should we take the records management test alternately, like you said? Or, I mean, I've only ever done the grandma certification.
It's really up to you. It's to give you a break.
What's the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Basically, should you do the test alternately? And my response to you would be, it's up to you. If you deal with grammar, you definitely need to take the grammar certification test. But you can give yourself a break and alternate with the records management, because I'm sure you also probably do some type of records management, and that's a very helpful certification as well. Just be aware, if you do not take the grammar certification test 1 year, just be familiar with any of the changes from the legislature. Anything else? Yeah.
How long does the test take?
Well,
What's the question?
sorry, Renee. How long does the test take? It can take 1 to 2 hours, I guess. You can take it over again, so until you pass. Within the test, we built in hyperlinks, so you can actually go to the law and look up the answers. So we've tried to make it a lot easier than previously, where it takes you right to the law where that answer should be.
So it isn't timed, it's just as long as it takes you to do it.
Right, and you can click out of it and you can go back in as well and pick up where you were, whatever module you're in. Yes, Renee?
Can grandma be denied for a news agency that has not paid, or is that decided by each requester?
Can grandma
be denied for a news agency that has not paid?
Can grandma be denied for a news agency that has not paid previously?
Yes.
I think that's up to the agency, what kind of policies they have for that. If somebody has failed to pay for previous records, then they
That's
can.
in the law too.
Yeah, they can withhold that. That's under 203 in the law.
Do you think the state records board would uphold that? I find that highly unlikely.
What?
I don't think the state records board would uphold that. That if they said, well, you owe money from before, so we're not going to answer any of your future grammar requests. I think that you would run into problems there.
You could. The statement was that the State Records Committee probably wouldn't uphold that, but you never know. Bring it to the State Records Committee and see. So we wish to have you here. Anything else? We're good? All right, Lorianne, do we want to take a 5-minute break?
You guys want to take a 5-minute break? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, I think almost everyone's back. My name is Lorianne Outerkirk. I think I've met a lot of you, and I'm the records analyst here at the State Archives. If you have any questions after today, you can give me a call, or you can give Renee a call about the public notice website. We do have certificates for you if you'd like to pick them up. They're over by the snacks. That's just documentation that you did attend today's training, if you want to keep that in your file. Nova went over the training that we have for certifying in grandma, and I'm going to talk about the training that we have to certify in records management. And the reason that we created this second training for records management is that we saw a real need with records officers to have knowledge both about answering grammar requests and about managing records, knowing about retention schedules and record series. Also, there are records officers who only have responsibility for one or the other. And so it didn't make sense for someone who only deals with retention schedules to have to certify in grandma. The first section of the Records Management Act goes over some definitions. It provides a warning as far as managing records, and then it also covers duties of government agencies and the state archives. Some of the definitions that the training covers are these listed here. I'll give you just a moment to read over them. And Nova went over the definition of a record. That is covered again in the records management training, focused more on the management of records. So there's a different emphasis placed on it in this training. So we're going to talk a little bit about these definitions in a minute. The warning that the training gives, or I would say it's a responsibility, is that government agencies have the responsibility to properly maintain their records. It is illegal to destroy records prematurely of them meeting their retention. And there is some legal recourse that can take if that occurs. My experience has been that largely agencies strive to manage the records properly according to the retention schedules. And that they are very conscious of being stewards over their records. Unfortunately, it does happen occasionally that records are destroyed prematurely, and so the state has outlined what can occur if that happens. As far as duties go, the records management training covers the responsibilities of the Chief Administrative Officer, namely that the Chief Administrative Officer is to oversee the records management program and appoint records officers. In the law, it states specifically that the Chief Administrative Officer is responsible for the records management program. The records officer's responsibility is in the day-to-day execution of the records management program. So ideally, records officers are working with their Chief Administrative Officers for setting up a records management program. And then the duties of the Division of Archives and Records Services, so support that we provide here, is with archiving records, managing records, and we'll talk about the tools that we provide for that, training that we provide, standards that we publish, retention schedules, and then being a repository for historical records. So we have a lot of services that we can provide to your agency with the records management. The second section talks about principles of records management, and this is an illustration that we put in here that if you keep everything, you can find nothing. Nothing's important when you have everything. But if you have a records management program, you know where your records are, things are in their place, and there is value, apparent value to those records. This section is not so much about legal requirements for establishing a records management program, but more best practices that you can adopt and creating, giving yourself a business case for establishing a records management program and getting support for it. The third section goes through 10 practical steps for implementing retention schedules. And here are the 10 steps. I'll give you a second to read through them. If you are at a point in which you are ready to, or you are starting to investigate how to establish a records management program, your records analyst here at the State Archives is happy to assist you with that. And so they can help you go through these 10 steps if that's what you want to do. But you can go through the training, learn about them, highlight what it is that you want to work on, and then we can help you with that. As we were developing the training, we also wanted to look at points of pain. So these are common, what would you say? These are common questions that we receive from agencies about managing records, things that we've identified that there's a lot of questions and about what it means to manage records and a lot of questions about how to do that. So one of the questions that we get a lot is retention schedules. What are the retention schedules and what are the different types of retention schedules? So there's the general retention schedules, and those are schedules that are published by us, by the state archives. They are available to all government agencies to use as they are published. And those are just available on our website. We are in the process of updating them, so you do have the opportunity to be part of that process if you're interested. And you can just email one of us if you want to be part of the conversation on how to update the general schedules, and we can put you in contact with the lady who is working on that. The other type of retention schedule is called a series-specific retention schedule. And this retention schedule is created specifically for a government agency, either because there is no general retention schedule that fits their record, or because they want to provide, or excuse me, they want to take advantage of one of our services, such as transferring records. So there are two ways in which your agency may have a series-specific retention schedule. If you do know that you have series-specific retention schedules, or you want to know if you do, I can help you after today, and we can look on the website, and I can walk you through that. Another question that we often get is, which copy of the record is the record copy? And the basic question is, the basic answer is that when you're identifying the record copy for your agency, there are some different considerations to take, and those considerations are pretty involved. So I'm not going to go into that today because there's a lot of, if this is the case, then this is a good solution for that. But if that's not the case, then this other thing's a good solution. So there's a little bit of analysis with that. But basically, the record copy is what your agency chooses to be the official copy. You commit to manage that copy, and then also, along with that, preserving it if it needs to be kept permanently, to keep it permanently. If you need to transfer it, then having plans to transfer it. So the record copy is the copy that's following the retention schedule. You may have other copies of that record, and those copies should be destroyed either prior to or at the same time as the record copy. You shouldn't have copies just available or still in existence after your record copy has been destroyed. Unless it's a permanent record, then it shouldn't. Then the record copy wouldn't be destroyed, and you may have some, like a user copy in your agency. But again, that gets pretty involved. I highly recommend, if you read nothing else out of the training, to read that section about record copy and format management, because it answers so many questions that we get. Another question that we get is, for example, if I scan my record and it's electronic, then do I still have to keep it according to a retention schedule? And the answer to that is yes. Records can be electronic format. GRAMA doesn't specify a specific format. It just says that it has to be reproducible. So it can be electronic. Electronic documents are reproducible. Going along with that, you may have records that are in social media, in email or instant messaging, or in information systems or in databases. I think Nova touched on this, but your database is full of records. The database itself is not a record, but the individual pieces of information that put together create a record and are subject to a retention schedule. If you have how many people in here do have a database that you work with regularly? Okay. Has anyone gone through the process of, like, you had one and then you moved to another one? I know Nina has, Courtney has. Okay. So along with understanding that the records in your database, or excuse me, the information in your database can be a record, is also having a plan for migrating those records if your agency chooses to change systems. And hopefully, or I should say ideally, that plan is part of the process when you're picking the next system, so that when you go to the next system, you already know how are these two systems going to be able to work together, or what is the ability of the system that you're currently adopting. Questions up to this point? Yes, Melissa.
With that, regarding this, I'm with the FCM, so we have a lot of construction, and a lot of times we have a lot of paper that's in our records, but building plans, CAD files are all electronic. So how do I have the retention schedule for our paper, but I know we can't send the electronic copies to the state archive, the record center, right?
Okay, yes.
So how do when I have the discs with all of the CAD files and stuff, do I send them just directly here, bypassing record center, or how do I?
So the question, yeah. So the question is, Melissa has contracts that are in two different formats. She has some of the records are electronic and some of them are on paper. And those contracts are permanent, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's
okay.
permanent.
So her question is, they're sending the paper records to the record center for a period of time before coming to the archives. But the electronic records, we currently don't have a record center equivalent for electronic records, so then should they just send them to the archives? That's a really great question. I would say we would want them to come here the same time as those paper records, so that we have custody of everything together. Also because each format is part of the whole record. The total retention, meaning the total time that those records need to remain in custody of your agency, is the same. Okay. So we don't want to send the electronic ones here before the paper ones.
So I would hold on to them.
Yeah, and I would say, have you worked with Ray Gifford on that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have an online question.
Sure.
Okay. Where did it go? When a grammar request is made for a record that's maintained...
I've got it. I've answered it.
Okay, but we need other people to know.
Oh.
Okay. When a grammar request is made for a record that is maintained electronically, is it required to release it as an electronic record? And does it have to include the metadata? And if you could repeat it just like no.
Yeah. Okay, the question is, if an individual requests a record from an agency and that record is in electronic format, is the agency required to provide that record back in electronic format, including the metadata? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So Novi, you can correct me here, but the requester can state what format they want it provided back in?
Correct. Under 63G-2-20111, it talks about electronic records. And if the requester requests it in electronic format, you try to provide that to them. Metadata, they ask for it, but not a whole lot of people ask for it.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. So 63G-2-20111, and that states that if they request the electronic copy, you need to provide that back. But as far as metadata goes...
And 11 and 12.
Okay, 11 and 12. But as far as metadata goes, if they can request it, but if they don't request it, then you're not obliged to provide that back to them.
But no, does it say you have to provide electronic, or you can? Because I thought it was...
It says, 12 says, subject to the requirements of subsection A, a governmental entity shall provide access to electronic copy of the record and will provide access to its paper equivalent if the person making the request requests or states a preference for electronic copy. So
okay.
That's under the 201-12.
Okay, so 12 says if they request the electronic record, you can either provide it back in paper or electronic, but they can ask for it to be provided electronically.
Right.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. The next part is transferring records as necessary, and I have worked with some of you who are here in person on transferring records, but there are a couple of different options that we provide as far as storing records, and it's a little bit confusing because we have two facilities and they both fall underneath the Division of Archives, but one is called the Record Center and the other one is called the Archives. So you can see where the confusion comes in. So this first place, the State Record Center, it's located in Clearfield, and this facility is intended for temporary storage of records. Usually we only send records here that are not permanent records. There's exceptions to that, but that's the general rule, because it's not temperature or humidity controlled. It is a free storage for government agencies, and the only cost to you is getting the boxes. We have special boxes from Office Depot, and then preparing those boxes and getting them to the Record Center. Once they're at the Record Center, we put the box number and the associated retention schedule is in our system, and then we track it according to the retention schedule. Once the retention has been met, if the boxes contain records that are to be destroyed, then we would send your agency a destruction notice and have you sign off on the destruction of the records before we actually destroy them. We take care of destroying the records. There's no cost to you on that. So if you have records in your office that you do not access more than, a rule of thumb is more than once a month, then this is a good option. This might be a good option for you. Especially I've been talking to a lot of agencies that are running out of room in their offices. You can request the records back at any time. If someone comes in and asks for a grammar request and those records are in the in the Record Center, then you can just ask for those records to be sent back to you. And the turnaround time is about 48 hours. And then the second is the actual archives building, which is where we are in Salt Lake. And this building is intended for historical records, so permanent records. We have a humidity and temperature controlled room that's actually just on the other side of this wall. And records come here after they have met retention with the agency. When they come here, custody is transferred. We take over the care and maintenance of the record. And then we also handle any requests from the public to access those records. We're subject to the same regulations as agencies are. We still follow GRAMA. And I think that's it. Nova has a question.
We have a question. When destroying records, do you need to keep a form explaining what records are destroyed with signatures, or what is the proper steps to destroy?
Okay, so the question is, when you destroy records, you need to keep a form or some sort of documentation that those records have been destroyed. And we, yes, keep a destruction log. We have a sample one. I don't know if we have it on our website, but I can certainly send it out. And basically you want to put the retention schedule, what the record was, the years that the records, the year span of the records being destroyed. Those are the basic fields.
It's on your website.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, the other thing you want is the signatures of everybody involved, right? Otherwise,
you can do signatures, yeah.
So if you have someone that comes in and says, I want this, and you're like, oh, we don't have it, but we have nothing to show, and we got rid of it.
Yeah, so there's agencies that will do an authorizing signature. It's basically there to back you up if somebody comes in and asks to see a record and you don't have it. You can go back to your destruction log and say, well, it met its retention, so we destroyed it. and that can be a great protection to your agency. Okay. I already covered this, but if disposition is destroyed, then destroy your records. If they're permanent, keep them permanently or transfer them to the archives. Retentions are not just a minimum, they are a legally approved retention period. And then again, all copies of records should be destroyed at the same time as the record copy. Questions? I have 1 minute. Yes, Melissa.
Once the archives has custody of a record, would someone calling for that need to fill out a grammar request or just come down and ask to see?
Our research room would handle that, and so they have a form, a request form for any records that.
What was the question?
So the question was, if someone comes to the archives and they want to access a record that we have, then do they need to fill out a grammar request? And our research room has a form for people to fill out to request records. And then they would review that, and if there was a question about if any of that information would not be public, then we would review that and respond accordingly.
So we just direct them to the...
If we have the record.
You guys have the
Yeah.
record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, sorry for the wait. I was getting the poll ready for people online. Oh, that's supposed to be at the end. Okay, here we go. Okay, Open Records Portal. Hello, everybody. My name is Renée Wilson, and I am the Open Records Portal administrator. Have any of you used or heard of the Open Records Portal? Excellent. Oh, it just came disconnected. Okay, good. So some of you have. Okay, great. Don't touch anything. So the Open Records Portal is a website. The address is openrecords.utah.gov. It looks like this at the moment. And there's 3 different parts to the portal. The first part is the grammar portal, which is where you make the requests. Well, probably not you specifically, but requesters. And you receive the requests and respond to the requests. And we also have a new feature, which is that you can input requests that you receive outside of the portal. So this is probably not very useful for people who have dozens or hundreds of requests a month, but if you have a smallish number, then you can track all of your stuff in the portal if you so desire. And then you can download your portal statistics, so how many requests you've had and all that sort of thing. The second part of the portal is the Open Records part. It's not actually active yet, but in the future, some of the things that you can already do online, like create a record series or submit a transfer request form, transfer record form, those things you will be able to do in that one place, and in the future you'll be able to upload actual electronic files as well, and all sorts of fun things. The Records Officer dashboard, I'm guessing some of you have already used, because it's where you go to sign up for training. And you take your certification tests. You can also update your personal information and as well as your agency information. That is new. And another new thing is that we have, I'll be showing you later on, you can make specific fields to collect certain information from people if you need certain information. So more on that in a moment. This all came from the law, of course, the legislative session of 2014, and it changed the Open Utah website to include a place where people could submit records requests. So the actual text of the law is right here. I'm not going to read that to you. But the important part here is that the portal will serve as a point of access for grammar requests. And then at the bottom you can see the It mentions providing link capabilities to online records, which is another thing we are doing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the portal we opened in 2015 for state agencies, in 2016 for counties, municipalities, school districts, and transit districts, and now, 2017, we are open for you, for special districts and local districts and interlocals, which is actually really to your advantage because we have worked out a lot of kinks by now. So you're actually getting a much more polished product than the state agencies ever got, and more features too. So I'm glad to be able to offer you something that is a little bit more robust than originally rolled out. I'll just go through the most common questions that I get. The number one question that I get from agencies is, do I have to use it? And the answer is kind of yes and no. The yes is that if you get a request through the portal, like someone submits a request through the portal, you do have to actually go to the portal to get the request. But you don't have to respond through the portal. You can just print it out and do whatever you want. So that's the kind of yes and no. When does the time limit start? So the time limit actually starts when the request is opened. It's not when the person submits the request. It's when the request is opened. Or if you don't open the request at all and it sits there for 10 days, then it will also expire. You will be receiving several annoying emails if the request sits unopened for several days. That's also a new feature. And apologies to the people who had issues with that when we first implemented it and it sent them when they shouldn't have sent them. It's working now. Okay, so do you need to create an account? Yes, I'm assuming this isn't an issue for most of you because it's if you registered through the dashboard, Records Officer dashboard, then you already have an account. That's great. If not, or if additional people need to sign up for an account, you can do that. Personally, I want to say it's fairly simple and straightforward, but I know there's snags, and a lot of, even myself, have had issues with trying to log in. So, but if you set up any account online, it's pretty much the same process. If you do have any questions, just give me a call, or your analysts. We're all been trained to help you so that they don't be not as painful.
Renee?
Yes?
Question. Does the portal request apply only to entities that have records stored at the state archives?
Okay, so the question is, does the portal request apply only to agencies that have records at the state archives? No. If you are a special service district or a local district or interlocal, you are on the portal and you can get a request for records. And those will be records that you have in your agency or in the state record center, or if it's not the state archives, then they should be sending the request to us. But it's anyone. Yes, another question.
Can someone please explain the difference between the Utah ID login and the utah.gov login? Which is used for what?
Okay, so the question is, what's the difference between the Utah ID login and the utah.gov login? Aren't they the same? They both use the Utah, okay, so they both are connected to UMD, which is the Utah Master Directory. And you should have a Utah Master Directory login that gets you into the Open Records portal and the Public Notice website. And if you have problems with it, we can help you troubleshoot, or you can call DTS. We have a number for them upstairs on my computer on a sticky note. Did that answer the question? Okay, great. Okay, so a couple tips. Do use a specific email address that is yours only, that no one else uses. That will make it a lot easier. When people share email addresses, a lot of times that creates problems. If you want a generic email address for notifications, then let us know, we can change that. If you can't log in, try setting up a new account with your email address. If it says the email is already taken, try resetting the password. That fixes about 90% of problems if you do that. If not, give me a call. Okay, so requests, are they public? They are not public. On the one hand, however, grammar says that the grammar requests have a suggested designation of public, but of course each agency determines their own records classifications, so it's really up to you. We tell people that they are, let's see, oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, only the requester records officer and web administrator, which is myself, can see the record. So you do have to be logged in the secure system to see the request. And we do try to tell people not to submit sensitive information. This is part of the request form, and you can see we tell people there, do not submit any confidential information such as social security number or account numbers, which we've already had submitted, but we try. Yes, no?
When we receive grandma requests through the portal, will it email us, or do we just have to check the site to find it?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to address that. The question is, when you receive a request through the portal, will you get an email or do you have to check? No, you do not have to check. That would be a pain in the neck. We will send you an email. So if someone requests something from you through the portal, you will get an email notification. So if you have one specific email address you want that to go to, let us know. Or if you just want it defaults to the grammar specialist that we have for your agency. If there's no grammar specialist, it defaults to the records officer. And if there's no records officer, it defaults to the chief administrative officer. So if you're okay with that, then you don't have to do anything. If you want it to go to a different unique address, let us know and we can fix it. Also at the bottom of the form, we have a notification that all requests are public. Again, they're not actually visible to the public, but we are trying to discourage people from including sensitive information. And then the requests are not actually kept forever. They will be following the State Schedule 1-64 for records requests, which is 2 years. And I know a lot of local agencies were concerned about people abusing the system. I haven't actually seen anyone abuse the system. You do have to submit your requests, one at a time. You can't just batch upload to every agency. And I mean, there are people who submit a lot of requests, but that's not quite the same. So if you do have any problems with people who you feel are spamming you, let me know and we can take care of that. Okay, before I show you what the portal looks like, I want to show you a couple of resources.
Will you help us with that, with ones that don't go through the open portal?
The question is, will I help them with people who are spamming them who don't go through the open records portal? I can't, but I'm sure Rosemary can do something. So a couple resources for you that we have online. If you're on the main page and you scroll down, there's this little help center link. And that just is a bunch of different articles on how to do stuff. If you don't see what you're looking for, email me and I can make a new page. Usually that's how I make a new page there, is because someone will email me and I'll say, oh, this is something everyone should know. And I'll create a new page. There's frequently asked questions as well. That mostly has to do with grammar type questions, not portal type questions, if that makes sense. And the contact us, our information is there. So if you forget our information or who to call or whatever, then it's there. So how it works. It's easy in principle, theory. So the requester finds your agency and they submit a request, and then you get a notification that you have a request, and then you respond to it. Very simple. So on the main page, a requester comes to this page and clicks any of those categories, and then they see this page. I'll zoom in a little. That is the page with all your agency information on it. And to submit a request, they click Request Records. They go to this page, which is basically a digital copy of our generic grammar form. So I'm just going to go through this quickly because it's not really, you don't need to know this, but just so you can see what they see. At the top of the page is your agency information, and then the place where they actually put in the records request itself. Then comes their information, their contact information. And then if their records are restricted and they feel they should have access to them, they can state why. And then any other special considerations like the, this one, fee waiver. I think that's our most popular button right there. And then the expedited response, of course. They can specify that right there. Then when they're done, they can either just submit it or upload records. And I will show you where to find those uploaded records. On your end, things look a little bit different. You have this new look things, these boxes here that we added, which will be more useful as we add content. But if you click the dashboard button, you will see a box for notifications, which will tell you like if your certification is coming due or if you have training coming up. Also news, which we haven't really added too much there yet. And then you can see the records requests. If you just click on the records request button, you will just see the records request. So the dashboard has these little boxes, records request does not. So if you're looking at the records requests, I don't know how many you're going to get, but if you have more than one, you can sort them by these different headings at the top. And then to open a request, you just click anywhere on the request, except this little plus sign there. If you click on that, it will just kind of expand the request like that. So just opens and closes. That gives you a preview and does not start the timer. So the timer only starts when you click the actual request and go and look at it in full. I'm not expecting you to remember all this, and please don't try to remember all this, but just as a general overview so you can kind of breathe it in. If you want to see requests that have already been closed, you can click Advanced Search, only open requests, say no, and then do the apply filter, and you'll be able to see all the requests. At the bottom of the screen is a reports button, which is kind of misleading because they aren't actually reports. It's just a CSV file of data. But if you click on it, you can select your agencies and the dates that you want and get the data about your agency's requests through the portal. Yes? Yeah, just start it again. Nova, can you start it again? Someday we're going to have all the technology figured out and it's going to be perfect and everyone's going to love it, especially me. So you can enter the request manually. I am really excited about this new feature that is there now on the records request page. If you scroll down to the bottom, it will bring you to a page that looks suspiciously like the submission form, but there are a few differences. And then once you put it in, it just shows up in your request. So pretty awesome. So what you will see most of the time and deal with, when you open the request, it looks like this. And I'll go through this as well so you can see what you're looking at. At the top, there's the title and the date that it was submitted, the date that it's due. Oh, not the submitted date, sorry, just the date due. If you have any fees, they will show up there, the total, and I'll show you that later. And then the date range. This is the actual request itself. We're working on I'm writing up a request to have it maintain the formatting. Right now it's just a big blob, which I don't like, and I'm sure no one else likes either. And then we have, so if they have power of attorney or think they should be able to see these records, they can, that's where it'll show their reason why. The fee waiver shows up there, the expedited request shows up there. And then more detailed, that just shows their name and email, phone number, that information.
Do they have to upload the power of attorney document?
for us to see?
The question is, does the requester have to upload the power of attorney document for you to see? That is completely up to you. However, you will accept that power of attorney because it's digital, and some agencies will only take a certified copy. However your agency does it. So that's up to you. You can print the requests. There's the button. Okay, let me tell you about this button. This is a really special button. It's called Close Request. It doesn't work. It does nothing. Don't ever click it because it will just frustrate you. It will be going away soon, but not yet. So, yeah, don't touch it. If you want to close the request, click the Respond to Request outside of portal, and that will close the request. So, and also if you respond outside of the portal, click that button, because that closes the request. Then there's this table that shows you the different, here's a question, yes.
Verifying identity, how does it work for online requests?
Verifying identity, how does it work for online requests? It's really up to you, your agency. You need to have probably policies in place on what you will accept and won't accept. Most agencies that I have talked to still require a person to come in person and show their ID in order to access records. So, but it's really up to you. I'd say talk to your legal counsel or whomever and determine what is best for your agency. So these are the different parts of the request. So of course you need to answer or approve or deny the expedited request and the fee waiver request, and then there's the main records request. And you can do that individually right here by selecting whichever one you want. Underneath that is the detail for whichever request portion you've selected. One cool little thing is this button here that says divide request in parts. So if you have a request and you need to approve part of it and deny part of it, you can click this button and then it will all of a sudden become two. And then you can revise the first one to say whatever you want it to say, approving this one, and change the second to say whatever you want that to say. So at the bottom is the really the good buttons that we all like and really make the most difference here. So the approve, you can approve, you can upload a file, you can put in a link, any of that. The file has a limit of 30 megabytes, and you can also upload other files as well, which I will show you in a moment. Oh, one important thing, you have to put in a message here, of course, and once you click approve, an email will be sent to the requester stating your decision and also the result that you type in, whatever you type in as a note. So they will automatically be notified of your decision. Same with the denial. Once you click that, they will be notified. The Chief Administrative Officer information shows up here. It should show up automatically, if not, fill out. And you can also send this denial to other people, like if your CAO wants a copy of it, then you can do that. Extraordinary circumstances, Nova mentioned these. We have them all here because they are all listed in the law. And depending on when you pick up here, it will change the date that you select down here for when the records will be made available to you or your agency. So that's all built into the system for you. Oh, I forgot to change the title. This is actually referrals, not extraordinary circumstances. You can refer your requester to someone else. It doesn't actually send the request to other people. They still have to do that. It just tells the requester, hey, you need to go talk to someone else. So you can select by actual records officer or agency, or you can just do it freeform, just type in whoever they need to go talk to. We also have this little button, which will be moving places and files so that you can find it more easily. Does not exist referral. If the records don't exist for whatever reason, maybe they never existed, maybe this person requesting them is confused, you can click that button and write a notice and they will get that. Fees are really cool. We have two different kinds of fees. I'll go through this hopefully quickly so that, because we're nearing the end. The first fee is just for like items, and you can put in how many items and what the price is, and then at the top of that page, it will show the total, so it will total up all the fees. The requester can also see this, so they can come in and click that, and then it will show all the fees that they are quoted. And then if you want to contact a requester, you can through the portal. It's just the same as sending an email, except I would actually recommend sending an email instead, because if they respond to this, you won't get the response. But if they respond to your email, you'll get that. We have some cool other things. Tasks. You can put in, this is where you do a fee for like an hourly fee for service for work done. So if you click, you can put in the work that someone did at an hourly rate, and then how many hours or minutes it took, and then the system will automatically calculate how much that is. Ah, there it is. Question, yes?
It doesn't take.
Oh, sorry, the question is, does it take payment? No. No, it doesn't take payment, actually. That is something that I hope for the future, but it involves money, so of course it's tricky. This is where you will also find the documents. Right now they are called references. So if you're looking for uploaded documents, they're right here. That will be changing hopefully in a couple months to actually say uploads, so you can figure that out more easily. But right now they're references. Again, there's a 30 megabyte size limit, for which I apologize, but we got that moved up from 2 megabytes, so I'm kind of proud of that at least. You can upload as many files as you want. I've gotten up to 106 before I gave up and decided to do something else. So it's a lot of files.
So is it 30 megabytes each file?
Yes, 30 megabytes each file. And then notes, if you put in a note, shows up there. And there's a log. And that is the request. We do want to know if you have special records request needs, or you're already using an online system. If you have questions or concerns or requests or suggestions, we love suggestions on what we can change. And if you like it, that's also kind of nice too, to know. What does this mean for you? If you get a request through the portal, please answer it. If you don't, it will be denied. That's pretty much what it means. Some other tools that we have that I will show you. You've seen the certification, or you've seen the register for training. The certification is also on there, which I really love. It's a super fun screen. You can see the dates that you were certified and also the different tests that you can take. And then all the tests that you've taken, you can print up certificates for. And if you missed any on your last test, then you can see the questions that you missed. If you didn't miss any, you can't see that because you didn't miss any questions. Register for training, hopefully you've all figured out. You can update your personal information and your agency information. That is new. You can update your agency information and include a URL for your agency. And if you have that generic email that you want for your agency, you can put that in right there, agency grant. And then the request form, just the special fields that you can add. You click the new custom field, and then you can pick any type of field that you want. So you can pick like a number or a text entry. You can pick multiple choice. You can pick upload, and that way. So right here, I've added a couple fields that I want to get from people, information that I want to get. And then that way, when the requester goes to the form and fills it out, those fields are already on the form, and they will fill it out for information that you need. Is there a question?
The question is, where is the Utah Master Directory?
The Utah Master Directory, UMD, is not available to the public. It's maintained by DTS, I think. So just to close, I wanted to make you aware of the transparency board. So all of this is, the portal is being kind of guided by the transparency board. They're the ones who we report to and who tell us, okay, great, let's focus on this next. So if you do have any large scale concerns, like legislative scale concerns, they actually like hearing from people who handle the records rather than us people who sit in our office and don't handle records. Well, we handle different ones. We don't do records requests. So anyway, they like to be contacted. All our contact information is on here, and we will have this available online so that you can have our contact information. But that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, spectacular. If you do, feel free to contact us at any time. And then for people online, we will send you a link to an evaluation. I'm sorry, I didn't have that ready at the moment. For those who are here in person, if you would like to fill out the evaluation, it helps us to be able to make the training better for next time, and also to know what worked and what didn't. Nova.
We had a glitch with the system, so if you do not find your name up there for a certificate, let us know and we'll write one out for you.
So the message was, if you don't find your name, what's the certificate? That's for people who are here. If you don't find your name on the certificate, let us know. And for everyone online, we will be sending out those certificates to you. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for coming.